So, today we'll explore how your restroom experience can be costing you as it might be unintentionally excluding users and how inclusive hygiene can improve experiences and business outcomes. So, no small topic. So, I want to just get this started with a bang, okay? So, today's presentations will be followed by a panel discussion and a live Q&A. So, to give you some housekeeping notes, feel free to talk, you will be muted, but I would like you to put all of your questions in the chat. We will try to adjust as many questions as we can at the end of this presentation. I know even when you registered, quite a few people sent in questions already, so we have several seed questions to work with. So keep those questions coming because the more questions you ask, the better the presentation will be. If we can shift to the next slide, please. Now I would like to introduce you to our expert panel of speakers. We're joined by Raquel Carbonari, Brand Activation Director at Essity, representing the TOR brand today. We also have Julio Barin, Executive Director at The Gathering Place. And we have Dr. Steve Syer, co-founder of the American Restroom Association. Now I am very happy to turn this over to Raquel.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar or for watching the recording. As we said, it will be shared afterwards. So to kick us off, I would like us to watch a short video of Americans who face barriers to hygiene in public restrooms. Play the video.
I'm an older woman and I have the beginnings of arthritis.
So the condition that I have is contamination, OCD.
My daughter, she's very sensitive to noise.
Having eczema on skin is super sensitive.
The noise overstimulates me.
Every day, hidden hygiene barriers shape the lives of thousands of people. From soaps that trigger allergic reactions to noisy hand dryers, impacting both the reputation and the revenue of businesses. But it doesn't need to be like this. TORC is on a mission to remove these barriers, developing hygiene products for all users. And partnering with businesses and organizations worldwide to make restroom hygiene inclusive for all. Join us, and together we can create public restrooms that truly include everyone.
I think it was important to watch that video because this video shows real stories of Americans who are facing barriers to hygiene in public restrooms. And this is a topic that is really top of mind for the TORC team. It's how we make hygiene in public restrooms more accessible. The reality is that restrooms have not kept up with the needs of individuals. And this is not only impacting the individual, their families, but also different types of businesses and facilities. So moving on, we want to share with you a recent TOR Insight Survey that we released on Tuesday of this week. TOR surveyed 1,500 Americans and 1,000 Canadians on the topic of hygiene accessibility. And this is what we learned. Over 50% of the population has conditions impacting their use of public restrooms. I realize this statistic might seem very surprising, but the reality is that people have conditions that impact their ability to use public restrooms comfortably. And this is something that we believe we can address as the #1 professional hygiene brand. And we can educate you all on this information. So let's look more at the business impact. So in addition to asking people if they face challenges when using the public restroom, we also learned that half of people will take an action to avoid using the restroom. So depending on the type of facility you run, you might be missing out on revenue, let's say if you manage a facility within the hospitality or the food service space, people might not want to stay longer and buy that extra drink. Also, if you manage maybe a Class A office building, you might not be meeting the standards of your tenants, and you might be getting bombarded with complaints. A personal experience that I have is it puzzles me when I visited a Class A office building in Philadelphia with really high-end amenities such as a premium gym, a commons area with a gaming station and ping pong tables, and even premium drinks like espresso and kombucha. And then I go to the restroom and the experience drops dramatically. It's almost like the restroom was not considered as part of the overall experience that Class A office building was trying to convey. So we want to raise awareness, especially since restrooms are usually one of the most used spaces in any facility. So hopefully I caught your attention, and we can now look a little bit more into what are the conditions that people are exhibiting and to share some of these insights, as many times what we have learned is unless you don't suffer from this condition, you as a facility manager or cleaning staff might not be thinking about it. From our research, we learned that 2 in 5 venue visitors might experience a physical condition that impact their restroom use. Some of these conditions might be related to mobility, like needing a cane or being in crutches due to a temporary injury, or at times being in a wheelchair. However, we should also consider conditions that might not be as apparent, such as a skin sensitivity due to eczema or chronic pain due to arthritis. Therefore, it is important that when selecting hygiene solutions for your facility, you think a little bit more broadly about the conditions of the people your facility is striving to serve, and opt for choosing products that support more inclusive hygiene. Because if not, you run the risk that people's needs are not being met, and that can reflect in maybe a complaint that you might not know exactly what it means, but people might be frustrated. But also in the example of the soap that I mentioned, if the formulation uses harsh chemicals and people's skin is getting irritated and is being itchy and is uncomfortable, most likely what's going to happen next time around, they might not properly wash their hands, which can lead to a future risk, such as a contamination risk. If you're maybe in food service or in the office, it can spread illness. Similarly, we also learned that 2 in 5 venue visitors have experienced cognitive difficulties that limit them from restroom use. So examples of this might be anxiety from being in a shared space that's maybe crowded and a little dark, or if a person is neurodivergent who may be sensitive to loud noises coming from maybe a hot air dryer, and this can trigger them, or a person who's suffering from OCD who might feel overly overwhelmed if the cleanliness of the surfaces in your restroom are not up to par, despite your team spending a lot of time cleaning it. It just might be a surface that is not ideal or conducive for the space. So again, in a world where facilities want to attract and impress the people they service, it is important for us to also think about the restroom, as it oftentimes is the most visited place in a facility. And this presents to you as an opportunity to improve the user experience by removing barriers to hygiene. So I've been talking a lot about this term barrier to hygiene. So let's define it. A barrier to hygiene is a mismatch between a person's ability and circumstance and their environment. Some barriers are visible, other ones might not. But regardless, they challenge people every day. And as we touched on, TORC is on a journey to educate people who own, operate, and manage public restrooms about these barriers and help solve for them. Because by identifying the potential mismatch between a person's abilities and the restroom environment, facilities can offer more inclusive hygiene. I recognize that many of you might be thinking, well, we do comply with the Americans with Disability Act or Accessible Canada Act. And that, of course, is a great foundation and the law. But there's so much more that we can do to improve the experience of users and staff so that hygiene is truly accessible to all. Continuing with our soap dispenser example, you might be using a soap dispenser that complies with all the legal requirements, but in actuality, it's hard to use, or the formulation uses some ingredients that cause people to have allergic reactions. And again, maybe if you're in a healthcare facility, you know how important hand hygiene can be. And sometimes you see the hands of nursing or doctors that are very raw from that overwashing. So making sure that you have not only the dispenser, but the formulation that allows for better hygiene is also very important. Another example that we have is around restroom stalls. Sometimes you might have restroom stalls that offer wide gaps between the partitions, and that does not provide enough privacy for individuals, and that makes people feel very anxious and overwhelmed. So, moving on to our next definition, let's learn what the term inclusive hygiene means. Because I have been using it quite a bit. Inclusive hygiene in public restrooms is a movement that TOR has initiated dedicated to meeting the hygiene needs of as many people as possible within the restroom. Specifically, this means enabling a restroom environment that considers the full range of individuals' abilities and circumstances. So hygiene is truly accessible. You might be wondering, what do I mean by circumstances? And a good example is maybe a person who's supporting an older parent or a child as they navigate the space. That's a circumstance. You're playing the role of a caregiver, and thus restrooms support that. And again, not all facilities need to think about that, but some do. Overall, it is extremely critical that we think about this and we think how we can elevate the public restroom experience. Because as I shared earlier, half of the population is experiencing barriers to hygiene. And the people who operate this space oftentimes are not thinking about it and are unaware of it. And these are the individuals that can drive change. So with that, we want to hear from you. I think it's always good to see whether this is a life experience that you identify with. So please enter in the chat, what barriers to hygiene in public restrooms have you or a loved one experienced? So let's see the chat. Yes, I see that. No soap. Again, it's super frustrating. Sometimes you go to a restroom in a restaurant, there's no soap, and then you wonder, how is the kitchen staff cleaning their hands if there's no soap? Yes, we do hear a lot about skin irritation. Some individuals might have sensitive skin, might have suffered from eczema. No toilet paper, that is terrible, but that's true. That happens. Too small to bring your kids in. Again, playing that role of caregiver can be at times very, very challenging. No paper towels, dirty bathrooms. In our survey, we learned a lot about odor. Odor is a trigger for many people. And if the space might look clean, but if there's a bad smell, because it's not being aerated correctly, the space, it just overwhelms people. So thank you for sharing those barriers. We're going to move on to the next question. So what actions have you taken as a result of a poor restroom experience? Let's see what people say in the chat. So, okay, no returns. Again, let me see. They're coming in. I will hold it until I get home. Again, if you're at work, that can be tough. Avoiding the facility completely, I agree. I would like to share my personal story. When my children were young, there were two restaurants that we frequented a lot with my family. The food was good, the price was fair. But what secured our return visits over and over again was that the establishment offered very good restrooms. And I could take care of the hygiene needs of my family in this clean, comfortable space because I knew it was a place that I can rely on. It was not so much the rewards program or the daily specials. It was honestly the restroom. And as I see in the chat, I'm not alone. And most recently, there was a really interesting article in the Wall Street Journal titled The Traveling Sales Rep and the Biggest Trade Secrets That They Can Share. And a lot of it is about restrooms. Where could these individuals whose office is everywhere as they're traveling to see their clients, where could they stop and have the dignity they needed to relieve themselves physically and at times mentally? So with that said, let's look at more data. So from our survey, we have learned that, again, there's a strong connection to business performance. Hygiene is extremely important, not only because of health, but it can have an impact. It can impact how your employees feel, if they feel valued. It can also make guests want to return, as there were some examples in the chat, and also your facility's reputation. You don't want to be one of those facilities that is showing up on Reddit where people are complaining. So the fact is the matter is that poor restroom experiences impact business performance. And here on the screen, we can see some of our latest statistics. We learned that 15% of people change the location they're going to because of the restroom. We learned that 38% of people avoid eating or drinking to limit their use of the restroom. And when only 1 in 5 restrooms meet the hygiene and cleanliness expectations of people, then we can learn that, again, people might not feel as valued because that's a space that they need and their office is not offering it, or their manufacturing facility is not offering a convenient restroom. It might lead to complaints if you're a facility manager and something else that you have to deal with. Or in the world of hospitality, it can lead to a poor review. And that's not how you want people to talk about your facility. These statistics speak to how critical it is to raise awareness for the million of people who are challenged and to change their behavior. But also, it is important to highlight the true business opportunity. Again, I think this is where we would like you to have a paradigm shift, a changing thought. In the past, restrooms have been seen as, I just need to deliver it. It has to be there. Maybe it's a pain to take care of. But truly, the restroom can be an opportunity for you to excel in your facility management, to make that environment more accessible and more conducive for more people to participate in whatever capacity your facility offers them. That's why we want to shine light on the user experience and the success stories that facilities have done by implementing inclusive hygiene. So with that, we have an amazing set of panelists, as Elizabeth introduced. And I would like to ask Dr. Steven Syer from the American Restroom Association, whose mission is to champion better public health, public restrooms across America. He brings a powerful advocacy perspective into why inclusive hygiene is essential. And he also has a very compelling personal story. Dr. Syer, thank you for joining.
Thanks, Raquel. So my personal journey, essentially until the age of 41, I thought I was the only person in the world who couldn't urinate in public restrooms when other people were around. Now, almost 30 years later, after co-founding the American Restroom Association and also the International Pareiresis Association, which deals with people who suffer from shy bladder, or which is a social phobia, I know a whole lot better. The best surveys that we have show that about 7% of the US, Canadian, and populations, or about 20 million people, suffer from shy bladder syndrome. Worldwide, the figure is more like 3% or 220 million people. So how does this impact industry? Well, first, industry needs to realize that this is a serious barrier to hygiene. As we talked before, it's a mismatch between a person's abilities and the circumstances in their environment, or as we say in my field of social work, the person or persons in the environment. Second, in the way current public men's restrooms, at least, are designed, the most important need is to have floor to ceiling dividers in the restrooms. And I'm sure that a lot of people know that's not true in many cases. Secondly, it's important to have fully enclosed stalls, or as they say in Europe, water closets, for the restroom user, both men and women's rooms. And if this isn't possible, the gap problem, as Raquel talked about before, this weird sight line into the stall, which is a bit crazy, needs to be eliminated. Finally, we, the American Restroom Association, is advocating for what we call SOAG designed toilets, which stands for single occupancy, all gender toilets. So depending on the establishment, you would have a series of water closets, a few or a lot, depending, in a row with, very importantly, an occupied or vacant red or green button on the door and a common sink area for people to use. And this design is, we think, the most forward-looking one that will be common standard in the future. The reason for this, actually, these changes have to do with the building codes. And several years ago, our organization and other people helped push through a code change that requires if you have more than one toilet in a venue, it must be all gender. So this has become the common design now in a lot of new establishments. Other code changes include having dividers now between all urinals. And this isn't particularly for shy bladder, but more to prevent what they call the splashback effect, but it serves the same purpose. And we are now advocating a new change that will raise the height limits on the dividers to roughly 6 feet as opposed to the current 4. And the last thing is this you don't see very much, but every facility needs it, is a sign that directs people to the restroom. I don't know how many times I've been in an establishment and walked around for a while to find the restroom or have to ask a staff person, where they're located. So in summary, for better customer experience, these issues need to be kept in mind when designing public toilets, as opposed to, what the bottom line might be or how inexpensively can we design a restroom. In Europe, it's a no-brainer. And when Europeans come to the US and see our public toilets, if they can find one, they're just appalled at the design of them. We have a long way to go in the US and Canada, but I can tell you that the quality of a business's toilets directly impact their bottom line. There's no question about it. And while we don't have figures on that per se, we do know from earlier information that roughly 3/4 of customers won't return to a facility if they have a poor restroom experience. And I just want to point out Buc-ee's, if anyone's been to them in Texas, and now they're expanding into Louisiana and elsewhere, where they actually advertise their toilets, and people go to Buc-ee's for the toilet experience because it's incredible if you've ever been to one. Okay, thank you very much.
No, well, thank you so much, Dr. Steven Syer, for sharing that. And it's interesting what you said. We do have research in our TOR survey that we released about people's behaviors and habits and how they might modify their routes when they're away from home based on good, accessible public restrooms. So we know people's behavior changes. And I'm sure that if I were to prompt people in the chat, you can all think about it. That's why it was so funny that Wall Street Journal article that talks about it. Maybe restrooms is not top of mind when it comes to other design elements in a facility, but they are super important. Also, I want to recognize all the great work that you're doing with advocacy and advancing this space. With TOR, we have been working with ISSA, also doing advocacy work for our industry. And earlier this year, we co-sponsored and co-developed the Spotless Spaces competition with ISSA, which is our biggest industry association, where TOR recognizes the outstanding cleaning environments and the teams that maintain them. Because again, this is all about design, but also the team, those members of the cleaning staff that oftentimes does not get recognized, but do a phenomenal job to ensure that restrooms are properly kept. As part of this program, we have created the TOR Think Ahead Facility Excellence Award, which honors a facility that demonstrates best-in-class approach to sustainable hygiene and embraces the ethos of inclusive hygiene. Again, I do think it's very important for the audience to see, okay, well, how does this look like? Okay, you show me the data, you talked about a user experience, we saw a video about individuals, but how does inclusive hygiene look like in the real world? Well, I'm very proud to have, as part of our panelists, the winner of the 2025 TOR Think Ahead Facility Excellence Award with us. And therefore, I'm proud to welcome Julio Badin, Executive Director of Gathering Place Park in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is truly a world-class facility and where we can learn from their approach to hygiene to truly offer a space that welcomes everyone. So Julio.
Hi, thank you. And I'd like to just start by saying that myself and my entire team were very honored to be the first recipients of the Think Ahead Award. It just showcases how important that is to each one of us. You know, when we talk about this world-class park, I try to explain it to people. It's actually really hard to explain. So why don't I let you see a video instead?
Gathering Place is not just a park. It's a world of adventure waiting for you. Nestled along the scenic Arkansas River in Tulsa, Oklahoma, this one-of-a-kind park is a testament to the power of community, generosity, and nature's endless wonder. Our story began with a vision that inspired change, to transform more than 100 acres of Tulsa's iconic waterfront into a vibrant, immersive haven where people from all walks of life could come together, explore, learn, and play, all for free. Gathering Place is a park for all. It's a welcoming escape where you can experience nature, music, art, and culture. Here, your imagination is limitless. Creativity and playfulness soar throughout the park's rolling hills, lush gardens, whimsical structures, and thoughtful architecture. The park is a place where moments are cherished, hearts are touched, and togetherness is prized above all else. Every corner of Gathering Place tells a story of families, friends, and strangers who've gathered to create lasting memories. From the playground and lodge to the gardens and sports courts, there's something here for everyone. At Gathering Place, we strive to educate, engage, and excite. As we continue to blossom and grow, we look forward to creating even more opportunities to be a park for all. So we invite you to gather with us, to be part of something extraordinary. Because here at Gathering Place, it's not just a visit. It's an adventure that inspires. to gathering with you.
So we say here that we're a park for all, but that commitment only means something if it's felt in every detail of a guest's visit. Today, I want to highlight how cleanliness, inclusivity, and world-class service come together in our public restrooms and why we think this work is as essential as anything. It's not optional because it provides comfort, access, and joy for every member of our community. At Gathering Place, our mission, vision, and values aren't just words on a piece of paper. They're lived out daily by our incredible team members. Excuse me. Our values of care, respect, and stewardship, especially of those values, we have quite a few values, but those values are especially what are present in our restrooms. And these are places that are often overlooked in public spaces, but never by my team. I have to tell you something. When I think about parks, I usually think about not going to the restroom. So it's really pretty amazing that you come to this park and that is not a consideration. You feel pretty confident that you're going to find a nice, clean, accessible restroom. And we believe that when a parent with a stroller or a guest with a wheelchair or someone managing sensory sensitivities uses one of our restrooms, it should feel like it was built for them. And there's a reason it was. From the very beginning, we said our restrooms wouldn't be typical park restrooms. Even one of our facilities is, every one of our facilities is fully accessible. Restrooms, which are in our main playground, for example, are designed to be welcoming, clean, and easy to reach. And they're thoughtfully designed with ample space and easy access. They're actually designed as family restrooms. And each one of these locations has a beautiful mural on one of the walls. And also, if you don't want to see that, we have one that does not. This thoughtful design allows for for a mother needing to assist their child using one of these family restrooms without any stress. We even use low fragrance supplies out of respect for our guests who are sensitive to strong scents. It's a small but meaningful detail. Cleanliness isn't just about sanitation. It's about physical and emotional comfort. Clean, inclusive restrooms don't stay that way without your people. And our team members are empowered to act with pride and ownership. See something, say something is part of our culture. And if there's trash on the floor, it's not there for long. Every team member will take responsibility for our guest experience. And that care, it's contagious. Our guests actually notice, and they start to treat the space with that same respect. That shared pride is real. One of the most powerful moments I've heard recently came from our Chief of Staff, Diva. Diva worked really hard to secure funding to add an adult changing table to one of our restrooms. After a lot of hard work by our team, we were able to secure and install this table in one of those cabana restrooms. Soon after, Diva was out in the park with our guests, and she encountered a family who had been struggling to find a place where they could change their adult child. Well, Diva mentioned that we had this adult changing table to the family, and you should have seen their faces. So Diva tells me that she shared some tears of joy with them, but they were just not expecting that they would be able to find something like that in a public park. That moment of dignity and ease, something so simple, is what this is all about. Clean, inclusive restrooms can transform a family's day. They tell people you belong here. You know, at the end of the day, inclusivity isn't just about policy or design. It's about consistent, compassionate execution. And cleanliness is foundational to that. It's not glamorous, but it is powerful. With every restroom, when every restroom that you have reflects care, when every detail is intentional, when our team leads with its heart, we create a place where everyone feels seen, valued, and welcomed. Gathering Place indeed is a park for all. Thank you.
Wow, Julio, I have heard you share that story with me. I think this is the third time, and every time I hear it, it just like warms my heart. And I think that's what we're trying to achieve. I think there's small changes and big changes that can have a huge impact on someone. And the idea, and what I really hope everybody walks away from this webinar, is to think about restrooms, not about that, yes, that space that has to be provided, and it's a lot of complaints, but as a very important place in the experience of your facility and what you're trying to offer. And it connects very strongly to the dignity of those guests or those visitors or those employees. Or so it's to open your mind and think a little bit differently about the restroom space. Obviously, Gathering Place is a spectacular place. I hope I can visit it one day with my family. But it's really to serve as an inspiration for many facility managers out there to say, yes, this has a significant impact. And let's look how we can make a business case to improve, again, one of the most visited space in a facility. So moving on and changing gears a little bit to some of the topics that we want to continue to cover is we want to talk about how TORC is championing inclusive hygiene and continue to bring attention for the barriers people face in public restrooms and how best to solve them. So if you're familiar with TORC or if you're not familiar with TORC, we want you to know that the TORC brand is committed to sustainable hygiene for all. We have a very robust and strong focus on sustainability. On the slide, you can see examples of our carbon neutral dispensers. We offer refills that are compostable and much more. But in addition, we are focused on the people part of sustainability. We want to raise those handy standards for all. Excuse me. And this idea of inclusive hygiene that we have been exploring today is integral to that. So, what are we doing to elevate our industry? So, in March, TORC launched the TORC Coalition for Inclusive Hygiene in Public Restrooms, which Dr. Steven Syer is part of it. We have put together an amazing group of experts and advocates who are passionate about finding solutions to hygiene and to help solve for those barriers that people are facing. These experts span from different categories, from policymakers, advocates, members in academia, mental health, and also restroom design. And we're committed to not only raising awareness, but developing resources that facility managers can take on and implement. This resource, the next resource that we will be launching, it will be in the fall. And this document will also help prove the case for why inclusive hygiene is something your facility should consider. So please stay tuned to those materials. Make sure you follow TORC, but we will also follow up, hopefully, with additional communication. In addition, I do want to highlight that this is not new to us. This is not a new trend and the new initiative that is going to be active this or next year. I want to make you understand that for the TORC brand, we've been working on sustainability and hygiene accessibility for a long, long time. Some proof points can be seen on the screen with the different certifications. But more importantly, in February, we were the first ones to receive globally the Design for All certification for our dispenser development process. So what does it mean? It means that when we develop our fixtures and our solutions, we are taking into consideration a broad array of individuals, the physical and mental ability to operate our systems, because our ambition is to truly make hygiene more accessible to all. So we're very proud of those certifications. We're very proud of the coalition, but we will continue to push forward with proof points to advance the industry and to make people think differently about this space that not only gives us physical relief, but oftentimes as well mental relief. It just came to my attention recently that for the community who's neurodiverse, oftentimes the restroom is where they go to take a minute when they're overwhelmed from being in a public space. Again, restrooms also play a role for people to take comfort. We can think about open floor plans for offices. Again, it's great to have open floor plans. Employees are engaged, they're talking, but at times it can get overwhelming. Where is the one space that people can go, wash their face, take a breather, and go back to their office or their desk? So it's oftentimes the restroom. So hopefully we will have inspired you to think a little bit differently about this space, and also to think about it in a way that is not just the right thing to do. As Julio shared, it has a big impact on individuals, just as Dr. Steven Syer shared, but also it's a huge opportunity for you to differentiate your facility. So with that, we can move to the next slide. If you want to hear more information about TOR, or if you want to send us an email with some questions, here's our information. If you want to jot it down, and we can then open to Q&A.
Thank you, Raquel, and all the panelists. I know this is just the beginning of a discussion on this very big topic. And thank you for advancing the movement and sharing all your insights. I greatly appreciated hearing this today. And I know we got a ton of questions in already. So I wanted to start with some of the ones that people submitted when they were registering. And I thought these first few were very spot on. So the first question here, for existing buildings with limited space or budget, what are some low-cost, high-impact modifications that support inclusive hygiene?
I can take that one. So from my perspective, my first suggestion is always to take a step back and survey your restroom. And based on your colleagues' feedback, the complaints that you get, what needs to be upgraded. And some of the upgrades don't need to be dramatic. You can start with something simple. If a lot of your complaints are about, as I saw in the chat, there's not enough toilet paper, there's not enough paper towels, then consider moving to a system that is higher capacity and that controls waste. Again, sometimes you go into a restroom and it looks dirty, but it looks dirty because someone pulled all these towels and they were all on the floor. So you can look at that. Another idea can be look at the formulation of the soaps that you're using. As I mentioned, eczema is something that we hear, especially in certain segments like healthcare, where people are constantly washing their hands. Look at the label. Is the product gentle on the skin? Does it have chemicals that are harsh? So again, sometimes something as simple as a formulation change or being aware to look for those things is a big impact. When we're looking more about design, I think some of the ideas that Dr. Syer shared are great. Again, larger urinal dividers to provide more privacy is fantastic. Adding an odor eliminator, air freshener is great with a light fragrance. Again, odor is a big thing, and in our survey it came back as one of the top things people complained about. You can also think about the bins. From our research and some of the resources that we will be launching in September, it was so interesting that placing trash bins by the door removes a lot of issues when it comes to things not looking tidy, because some people will use a paper towel and then open the door with it because they don't want to touch a surface in the restroom, and then they will drop it right by the door, which causes issues. So putting bins by the door is another idea, or placing large waste bins in each stall. And when I say that, I mean it in the men's and women's restroom. I think that is extremely important because we sometimes see challenges where women who are menstruated or menstruating individuals, you go to the stall and that bin is full with used product, and that creates a concern to you. And it's also a concern to the staff because they have to retrieve those products that are a biohazard. In the men's restroom, a gentleman might be suffering from incontinence from having had a procedure for maybe prostate cancer. So again, thinking a little bit broader, thinking about your population and how do you make hygiene more dignified in this space can be a small point to start.
I would just add two things. One would be very simply close the gap if there are between the stall doors, and a foot pedal for those who don't like to open up the door with their hands. A lot of people take paper towels to open up the door and then they drop them on the floor. So it serves a dual purpose.
Here's another great question. This affects a lot of you, and sort of related to the first one. How do you make the case to leadership for investing in inclusive hygiene in restrooms?
Well, I think as we shared at the beginning of the presentation, we have great research, great statistics about the population that is not, that their hygiene needs are not being properly addressed because they're facing barriers to hygiene. So my experience with leadership is you start with the data. We have this research, you can utilize it, but also make a survey in your facility. What's working, what's not working, right? If you are a facility manager and your tenant is complaining a lot about the restroom, well, what is driving those complaints? What could be resolved? And again, as we shared, depending on the experience or the type of environment that you offer, you might be losing revenue because you're not selling enough like concessions. Or if it's an office, again, you're driven by employee satisfaction, and you might be missing out in something that can be resolved.
Yeah, I guess as a senior leader, I would say it's nice when it starts from the top, but I would also add that you need to live it. And for those of us, so in my role prior to this as the head of customer experience for DFW Airport, I would take people out there and just say, is this what you want your guests to see? Is this how you want your guests to be treated? Is this what you want them to say back about your service, your what have you? And we did a lot of efforts to do a lot of what Dr. Seufer said with making lots of changes to address those needs. But it really is an understanding that experience is the entire experience, and a critical experience for humans is having to use the restroom.
I wanted to get to this next seed question, and then Daryl, I saw your question come in and I thought that one was great too. But how can restrooms better meet menstruators' needs for product access, safe and clean disposal, and efficient custodial operations?
As a person who has faced that barrier to hygiene in public restrooms and menstrual products were not offered for free, I would like to kind of like nudge facilities where it makes sense to do offer free menstrual care products. Again, some states are already requiring it in the United States. I believe Canada is also implementing that in some of their public spaces. So the law is changing. So I do think having access to menstrual care products is a good step. But as previously mentioned, I do think it's important to think about disposal as well. So making sure each stall has a waste bin that is large enough to house the traffic that you expect, making sure there's proper bag and disposal for your staff. Again, it is a biohazard, and in a world where employees are moving and there's such a need to retain your talent, it can be a simple thing that might improve their experience as a cleaner. Again, from my perspective, laws are changing. It is an interesting movement, but let's think holistically about providing the product, but also the proper disposal of the product is key. And I do want to do a shout out to ISSA as they have put in some very interesting guidelines for how to handle this bio-waste. When we were running our research, we also not only learned about this being a point of concern from cleaning staff, but also cleaning staff at times comes into contact with medical needles. So for example, if individuals suffer from maybe diabetes and they need to take their medication in the restroom, if you don't have a proper medical disposal bin, people might put that needle in the trash, and that presents a risk to your staff. So again, sometimes it's like small, simple steps to say, okay, let me look at my population, what are their needs, and how can I best solve for them in a comprehensive way, from offering maybe the solution to the proper disposal of it.
Just
want
to, go ahead, Steve.
No, I just want to share that these are really inexpensive, but really important changes. It's not like we're asking restrooms to, completely redesign themselves, but to make these small changes that will make the user experience much more satisfactory.
And just to give a little plug for CMM, I recently wrote an article on handling biohazard waste in restrooms, which is a huge topic, over 2,000 words worthy. So there's a lot on this subject. So please feel free to read that at your pleasure. I wanted to get to Daryl's question because I thought your facility was amazing. So Julio, everyone is wondering, does your park have, now where did the question go? Does your park have cleaning staff from opening to closing of business, or how does your cleaning staff operate?
Yeah, we have cleaning staff prior to open, and then throughout the entire operating day until a little bit after open. But every single team member here, I mean, we have a dedicated set of custodial professionals, but every single team member here takes pride in keeping the park clean, whether it's the restrooms or the rest of the park. So it's just a philosophy we have here and an attitude. But yeah, no, the restrooms are tended the entire day.
Great. Well, we are almost at time here. I just wanted to give our panelists and Raquel, I wanted to tell you thank you. If there's any last talking points or takeaway for our viewers that you would like to share, now would be the time.
No, I just want to share. Thank you so much for spending your time with us and to be curious about how you can improve the experience and think about the restroom in a whole different light as an opportunity for your business. So just overall, thank you for your attention.
Thank you everyone for attending, and we will have this recorded, so it will be distributed a few days after this has aired. Thank you.
Thank you.